Last time, we ranked the top 5 worst TNA Bound for Glory pay-per-views. But you can't have the worst without the best. Today, we're going to dive in to the top 5 best TNA Bound for Glory pay-per-views, starting with number 5, Bound for Glory 2023. In 2023, Bound for Glory took place in front of a packed house of 1,000 fans at Cicero Stadium in Chicago. The crowd energy was off the charts, and the show set the stage for some pretty memorable moments, and one big announcement at the end that had everyone buzzing. Bound for Glory 2023 kicked off with an X Division Championship match between Kenta and Chris Sabin. While most X Division openers start pretty fast, this one had a more methodical pace, something we've come to expect from a veteran like Kenta. Still, the slower style didn't take away from the quality, as both men brought a level of intensity that set the tone for the night. Kenta, known for his hard-hitting, deliberate style, and Sabin, an X Division icon, put on a match that may not have reached the emotional heights, but it did its job well as a special attraction. There's something about Kenta's aura that always feels big time, and while Sabin ultimately walked away with the victory, this match was a great way to kick things off. Next up, we had some heavy hitters in a Monsters Ball match. PCO, Moose, Steve Macklin, and Rhino. These guys are practically made for a match like this, and the chaos did not disappoint. PCO, as always, was the one to take the craziest bumps, and Moose and Rhino brought the brutality you'd expect. It was total carnage, with PCO emerging victorious. But there was one strange moment. Bully Ray cost Steve Macklin the win, yet there was never really any follow-up to that storyline. Still, even without the extra narrative, the pure intensity of the Monsters Ball match was a blast, and a standout moment of the night. Then we had the TNA Tag Team Championship match between the Rascals and ABC. When these two teams step in the ring, you know you're going to get a high-energy match, and this was no different. It was fast-paced, full of near falls, and the Rascals spray paint gimmick added some fun drama to the mix. This time, though, the gimmick backfired, allowing ABC to capture the titles yet again. If there's any team synonymous with the tag division in this era, it's ABC, and their victory here solidified that status. This was classic TNA tag action, quick, chaotic, and captivating. And now for one of the night's highlights, Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey. This was a legitimate dream match, the kind of bout fans had been talking about for some time. Ospreay hadn't wrestled for TNA since 2016, and he returned with a fire, taking on Speedball in what would become an instant classic. This was total non-stop action at its finest, Ospreay bringing his signature athleticism, while Speedball responded with creative, flashy offense, and it kept everyone on the edge of their seats. The match had everything: counters, high spots, and technical mastery. You could feel Ospreay's passion, especially since TNA was one of the promotions that inspired him to start wrestling in the first place. This wasn't just a match, it was a moment, and it'll go down as one of the best in TNA history. Ospreay once again proved he's one of the best in the world, and Speedball more than held his own. Following that masterpiece was the Call Your Shot Gauntlet, and while it's tough to follow a match like Ospreay versus Speedball, this was a fun match. This match had entrants like Bully Ray, Juventud Guerrera, and Sonny Kiss. But the night belonged to Jordynne Grace, who eliminated Bully Ray to win the gauntlet, and didn't waste a second. She immediately called her shot, challenging for the Knockouts Championship at Hard to Kill in January. Speaking of that Knockouts Championship, Trinity defended her title against Mickie James in a match packed with star power, and it had that big fight feel. Trinity's reign was pretty fun, and this was one of the biggest challenges of her TNA run. While it didn't quite reach the level of a classic, it was a high-quality match, and set Trinity up nicely for her showdown with Jordynne Grace. Having these two names in the ring made for a significant moment for the Knockouts division, and it helped solidify Trinity as a major player in the company. The main event brought us Josh Alexander versus Alex Shelley, two men who helped define this era of Impact Wrestling. Their first match was incredible, and while this one didn't have the same level of build, it still delivered. Shelley's technical skill and Alexander's intensity made for an engaging and suspenseful match. While it may not have quite hit the emotional highs of their first meeting, the in-ring quality was undeniable. These two are a reminder of the talent TNA has fostered in recent years, and they gave the fans a fitting close to an outstanding night. But the night wasn't over just yet. As the show wrapped up, we got a surprise that left fans in Cicero Stadium and around the world going crazy. Impact Wrestling would officially be returning to its original name, TNA Wrestling. The crowd erupted and the energy was electric. This was a nostalgic, emotional moment for everyone who's followed the company through its highs and lows, and it set the stage for a new era with TNA back in the spotlight. Bound for Glory 2023 had everything you could ask for. Top-notch in-ring action, a packed house, and a final segment that hit fans right in the feels. It may not have been the biggest venue, but the match's atmosphere and that announcement made it a night to remember. That's why Bound for Glory 2023 lands at number 5 on our list. Coming in at number 4 is a throwback to TNA's first Bound for Glory on the road, Bound for Glory 2006. This was a turning point for TNA, a show in front of 3,600 fans in Michigan, using Fozzie's Enemy as the anthem for the event. The energy was electric, and you could feel that this was TNA's big gamble, and it paid off. The show opened with Kevin Nash's Open Invitational X Division Gauntlet Battle Royal. That rolls right off the tongue. This was a chaotic, goofy match that featured a random assortment of X Division talent, competing for, of all things, Kevin Nash's bowling trophy. I mean, we had everyone from Zach Gowen and Norman Smiley to Austin Aries as Austin Starr from TV Land. It was dumb fun and a unique way to kick off the show, almost like the obligatory Big Show Battle Royal you'd see at WrestleMania. It might not have been a technical masterpiece, but it had charm, and it did its job of getting the crowd warmed up. Next, we had a 4-way tag team match that was essentially a way to get everyone on the card. The Naturals versus AMW and Team 3D versus the James Gang were essentially combined into one feud. On one hand, the Naturals and AMW had classic chemistry together, but when you throw in the Dudleys and the New Age Outlaws, things just felt off. They only got about 7 minutes, so it was over quickly and didn't leave too much of an impact, but definitely a forgettable mess. What wasn't forgettable was the Monsters Ball match, featuring Abyss, Samoa Joe, Raven, and Brother Runt, with none other than Jake the Snake Roberts as the special guest referee. Now, there were some quirks here. Jake Roberts, as great as he is, might just be the slowest referee in wrestling history, and seeing Samoa Joe in this match was a little weird. He was originally supposed to be in the main event title match, but with Sting joining the card, plans shifted earlier in the year. The match was entertaining for what it was. Abyss did his usual hardcore thing, Raven was showing a bit of age, and Brother Runt, well, he really didn't add much at all. It was chaotic and violent, even if it wasn't that Joe main event moment. He still made his presence felt. Next up was a quick match between Eric Young and Larry Zbyszko with a loser gets fired stipulation. Now, did this need to be on the card? Probably not. But the Don't Fire Eric gimmick was incredibly over, and the crowd was absolutely behind Young. They kept the match short, and it ended with a nice pop for Eric. Harmless fun, and it served as a feel-good moment on this card. It could have been worse. Then came one of the night's best matches, Chris Sabin versus Sen Shi for the X Division Championship. Low Ki, or Sen Shi as he was now known, came in with intensity, and his Mortal Kombat style persona was clicking with the fans. But Sabin, the guy was an absolute beast in 2006. If you haven't seen Prime Chris Sabin, you are missing out. The match itself was a technical masterpiece, with Sabin's precision facing off against Sen Shi's brutal strikes. The storytelling here was spot on, and Sabin edged out a victory in what became one of the best X Division matches in TNA history. This is a match that embodies TNA style. and what made the X Division so unique. From there, we moved on to an 8-mile street fight between Christian Cage and Rhino. This one was personal. Christian and Rhino had a history, and both had ties to Detroit. They didn't hold back. Rhino used everything from a car and Zamboni to street signs. The finish was brutal. Christian piled chairs on top of Rhino and bashed away until he was motionless. This was the kind of intense, personal fight that's missing from a lot of modern wrestling, and it was a standout on this card. Then came another great match, LAX versus AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels in a 6 sides of steel match. Following their Ultimate X match, this feud was red hot, and locking them in a steel cage just added to the chaos. We got some insane high spots. AJ climbed the tallest thing he could find, of course, and Hernandez, weighing near 300 pounds, got in on the action with a big dive himself. It was every bit as wild as you'd expect and added excitement to an already stacked card. Finally, we reached the main event, Sting versus Jeff Jarrett for the world title, with Kurt Angle as the special guest enforcer. Originally, this was Samoa Joe's spot, but with Sting returning, the story shifted to a classic tale of redemption. Sting channeled his Starrcade 97 run, reappearing with a new look, in top shape and ready to take down Jarrett, who had been the company's dominant figurehead. Most of the match was decent, but those final moments, pure wrestling magic. When Sting shrugged off an acoustic equalizer from Jarrett, beat his chest, and finally dethroned him, it was a perfect culmination. Watching the crowd go nuts as Sting claimed the title is an unforgettable moment. Bound for Glory 2006 was TNA's first true Bound for Glory, moving out of their usual soundstage and proving that they could pull off a big show. This was the pay-per-view that turned many first-time viewers into fans, and for good reason. With a hot crowd, great matches, and an iconic main event, Bound for Glory 2006 is more than worthy of number 4 on our list. Coming in at number 3 is a show pretty fresh on our minds, Bound for Glory 2024. Returning to Detroit, TNA delivered its highest attendance for Bound for Glory since 2013. This event was historic, packed with unforgettable matches and an energy that showcased TNA's recent momentum shift. The show kicked off with a high-octane battle between Speedball Mike Bailey and El Hijo del Vikingo. This was pure athleticism, with Speedball working over Vikingo's leg amidst the breathtaking moves. It was everything you'd want in an opener for the biggest show of the year. High energy, jaw-dropping spots, and a crowd absolutely fired up from the first bell. Speedball retained his title, and honestly, this might go down as one of the best openers in BFG history. Next, we had Spitfire taking on Rosemary and Wendy Chu for the Knockouts Tag titles. While Spitfire looked good as a team, the match itself was pretty standard and didn't carry much heat or storyline weight. After Spitfire retained, Rosemary turned on Wendy Chu, further thinning out the division's challengers. This match served its purpose, but on such a loaded card, it felt like a brief pause in the action. Then came a unique encounter between Josh Alexander and Steve Macklin. Alexander found a creative way to stack the odds, restraining Macklin with zip ties during the match. Despite the ref offering the help, Macklin declined and determined to fight through. He even went for a wild dive while tied, making him look like an absolute beast. While he eventually took the loss, the booking protected him, showing off his intensity and resilience in a pretty memorable way. It was an unusual twist that elevated both guys and kept fans on the edge of their seats. In true Monsters Ball fashion, PCO and Matt Cardona brought an all-out brawl filled with some brutal spots. This one was violent, with Cardona jabbing thumbtacks into PCO's face for a memorable visual. The stakes were personal, with Cardona's taunts about PCO's wife, Steph DeLander, fueling the fight. PCO took a beating, but managed to retain his digital media and international heavyweight titles, and ultimately, he got his revenge. This was the type of chaotic match Monsters Ball fans would love. and it delivered big time. Masha Slamovich versus Jordynne Grace came next, and this was Knockouts action at its highest form. It was their second Bound for Glory matchup, and it arguably topped their first. It was intense, physical, and told a compelling story. Grace passed the torch to Masha here, establishing Slamovich as the new face of the Knockouts division. This match showcased what the Knockouts are capable of, with Masha emerging as a powerhouse, ready to lead the division forward. Just a fantastic match all around. Then we got Nick Nemeth versus Joe Hendry, with Call Your Shot winner Frankie Kazarian as the special referee. This was as wild as it sounds. Out of nowhere, John Layfield made his presence known, hitting everyone but Nick Nemeth with his famous clothesline. Nemeth capitalized on the chaos and walked out with his title intact. It was a wrestling soap opera unfolding in the ring, and while it wasn't the title change fans expected, the chaos made for an exciting chapter in this storyline. It kept us all guessing and entertained. And then came the main event, Full Metal Mayhem Reimagined. This was like a Hardy's playground and was billed as their final TLC match, and they went all out. Jeff Hardy's unique style was seen everywhere, from the painted tables and ladders to the ring canvas itself. It was a nostalgic spectacle, paying homage to the iconic TLC matches they helped pioneer. Seeing them recreate spots like the famous Edge Spear, with Chris Bay taking the fall, was a highlight for any Hardy fan. Jeff Hardy topped it off with a Swanton Bomb off a ladder, crashing through Brian Myers onto a table. The Hardys captured gold once more, marking their legacy with yet another title win. The crowd was electric, and the energy was palpable, a fitting end to an incredible night. Bound for Glory 2024 was a standout show for TNA, with some of the best matches of the year in the company, and had an atmosphere that reminded us why Bound for Glory is their biggest night. It felt historic and meaningful, with moments that will go down in TNA history. Recency bias aside, this event stands as a milestone, and that's why it lands at number 3 on our list. Taking the number 2 spot is another recent standout. Let's go 2 years back to Bound for Glory 2022, held in Albany, New York. This Bound for Glory felt different right from the start. It felt like the first TNA show in years to feature an arena with bleachers, giving the event a fresh buzz and a visual energy that was sorely needed. The fans came out hot, and it set the stage for one of TNA's best shows. The night kicked off with Speedball Mike Bailey defending his X Division title against Frankie Kazarian. Kazarian, who was in and out of AEW at the time, shocked everyone by winning the title and cementing his commitment to TNA. This opener was everything you'd want: big moves, drama, and a crowd fully invested from the get-go. Kazarian felt revitalized here, like a totally different performer than he had been in AEW. It was the perfect way to start the night, with an unexpected finish that got people talking. Next up, we had Mickie James versus Mia Yim. This match was part of Mickie's last rodeo storyline, where every match could have been her last. Mia Yim gave it her all, but ultimately, she was not the one to end Mickie's career. In fact, this match ended up being Mia's last match in TNA, making it a bittersweet encounter. The two shared a strong history on the indies, and the chemistry was evident here. This match wasn't about titles, but about Mickie's journey, and it added depth to the card. The Knockouts tag titles were on the line next, as Vexed defended against the Death Dolls, Jessica and Taya Valkyrie. While the Knockouts tag division wasn't exactly stacked, it had a little bit of structure here, and both teams were established enough. The Death Dolls dynamic was fun and refreshing, but it didn't last long. Despite some solid work, this match was probably the weakest on the card, especially compared to some of the action we had already seen. The energy picked right back up, with Matt Taven and Mike Bennett of Honor No More defending their Impact tag titles against the Motor City Machine Guns. It was a high-stakes tag team clash, with both teams bringing their A-game. Taven and Bennett have always been underrated, and they shined here in what was a big-time TNA match against one of the company's most iconic teams. The hot crowd and high-level action made this one of the night's highlights. Then we had the Call Your Shot Gauntlet, and this one was an absolute fever dream. Call Your Shot matches are always a mix of pre-show talent and main eventers, but this one leaned towards the latter. Bobby Fish was billed as a hometown hero going into this show, but ended up getting booed out of the arena.
I mean, folks, where's the lie? Where's the lie?
Then Bully Ray made a surprise return, joining Rhino, Tommy Dreamer, and even Johnny Swinger in a nostalgic ECW reunion mid-match. Though, not everyone matched Swinger's energy. It came down to Bully Ray and Steve Macklin, and in a shocking twist, Bully Ray won after hitting Macklin with a Bubba Bomb. I think everyone expected Macklin to get his big moment here, but the sheer randomness of Bully winning TNA's Royal Rumble had me laughing and applauding. It was unpredictable, it was entertaining, and it's moments like these that make Bound for Glory special. What a weird match. Next was the Knockouts title match between Jordynne Grace and Masha Slamovich. This was their first Bound for Glory encounter, and it did set the bar high. Masha works heel here while Jordynne was on a roll as TNA's dominant juggernaut champion. The match was intense, hard-hitting, and solidified their rivalry as one of the best in TNA history. They've had several matches since, but this one laid the foundation, making it a standout on this card and in Knockouts history. In the main event, we had Josh Alexander defending his world title against Eddie Edwards of Honor No More. This was a career-defining match for both guys. Stiff strikes, nasty chops, and non-stop action. The overbooking, which can be a bit risky, worked really well here, adding drama and suspense as Josh fought off Honor No More's interference. Alexander did overcome the odds, and just when the crowd thought it was over, out came Bully Ray, loudmouthed and confrontational, to stake his claim for a title shot. It was the perfect end to an action-packed show. Bound for Glory 2022 wasn't just about the great wrestling, it was a show that got you invested in the future. The matches had emotion, the crowd was engaged, and there was a genuine sense of momentum. It felt like a big deal, and it had me wondering what was next for the entire company. You could put this show up against any other promotion's big events, and it would hold its own. That's why Bound for Glory 2022 lands at number 2 on our list. Finally, coming in at number 1 is the Bound for Glory that many fans consider the best, Bound for Glory 2007 in Atlanta, Georgia. This event is the epitome of TNA's classic era. It had the energy, the historic matches, and it's a show that longtime fans point to when they think of TNA's peak. Now, we do have to start with a bit of tragedy. There was a dark match between the Motor City Machine Guns and Joey Mercury and Johnny Swinger. That, unfortunately, we do not have any footage of, but we need TNA to open the vault for that one. The show opened with what can only be described as the ultimate X of ultimate X's, LAX versus Triple X in an Ultimate X. It sounds like some stupid match Elon Musk might book, but in reality it was magic. These guys are absolute lunatics, and giving them a structure like the Ultimate X was just asking for chaos. Elix Skipper hit his second most famous spot ever, flying from the top of the structure onto Hernandez. LAX ultimately won, and this is the perfect way to start the show with a bang. Following that was the notorious Fight for the Right Tournament Reverse Battle Royal. Listen, I've seen worse normal battle royals, but this one was a bit chaotic in its own way. Junior Fatu, known to WWE fans as Rikishi, joined the mix, adding to the madness. Eric Young pinned Robert Roode to win. Well, whatever that was. It might have been messy, but it wouldn't be Bound for Glory or TNA without something out of left field. Things didn't get any less unconventional when it was time for Pac-Man Jones to defend his tag titles with Ron Killings, or R-Truth. Here's the issue: Pac-Man couldn't actually wrestle due to his NFL obligations. Enter Xavier Woods debuting as Rashid Lucius Creed. complete with the Apollo Creed gimmick from Rocky. This was Creed's TNA debut, but despite being the hometown hero, he was a little outmatched by Tomko and mainly AJ Styles, who received the cheers. They took the titles from Pac-Man Jones and R-Truth, putting an end to one of wrestling's strangest title reigns. Next up, Jay Lethal versus Christopher Daniels for the X Division Championship. The X Division was losing some steam at this time, but this match kept the crowd engaged with its high-flying, technical style. Jay Lethal emerged victorious, cementing his place as a top name in that division. It was a solid match, albeit with a quieter crowd than you'd expect. Then came a match that probably didn't need to happen in 2007, but it's hard not to appreciate it. Team 3D versus the Steiner brothers in a best 2 out of 3 tables match. The match itself wasn't a show stealer, but context is everything. The Steiners were back in Atlanta, WCW's home turf, facing Team 3D in a clash of ECW versus WCW legends. It's more nostalgic than spectacular, but it was a special moment for fans who grew up watching both of these teams. The kind of match that should be at a Bound for Glory. Then came a historic match, the Knockouts title gauntlet. This was a standard battle royal, but it crowned Gail Kim as TNA's first ever Women's Knockouts champion. The match featured future Knockout stars like Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, along with ex-WWE divas like Jackie Moore and Christy Hemme. It was the birth of the Knockouts division and a game-changing moment for women's wrestling. Now for one of the most underrated matches in TNA history, Christian Cage versus Samoa Joe. The chemistry between these two was incredible, and you could feel every move. Special Enforcer Matt Morgan was there, which I pretty much forgot about, because the real story was in the ring. This was fast-paced, hard-hitting, and it kept the crowd invested the whole way through. Samoa Joe came out looking like an absolute beast, and this was truly a must-watch TNA match. Then we had the obligatory Monsters Ball match with Abyss, Rhino, Raven, and Black Rain. By this point, Monsters Ball had become a Bound for Glory staple, but this one felt like filler. Black Rain, aka Goldust in a darker persona, seemed checked out, and the match was surprisingly short, clocking in under 10 minutes. Not the most memorable entry in Monsters Ball history. The main event was iconic. Kurt Angle defending the TNA World Heavyweight Championship against Sting. This is the TNA Bound for Glory main event, with two of the company's biggest stars of all time clashing at the biggest show of the year. Kurt was at his absolute craziest here, smashing Sting in the face with a baseball bat and attempting a 450 splash, landing knees first into Sting. The stakes were sky high, and the match represented TNA's main event scene for years to come. Many consider this Sting's best TNA match, and it's easy to see why. The show isn't perfect, and there may be better individual matches on other cards, but Bound for Glory 2007 is iconic. It's the most representative of classic TNA, blending memorable moments, nostalgia, and historical significance, along with that weird TNA charm. For fans of this era, Bound for Glory 2007 is the ultimate TNA experience, and that's why it stands as the greatest Bound for Glory of all time. Let us know your favorite Bound for Glory in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.